What's going on, everyone? Time to continue my Draconis Reach setup. I've got my force ready to go. I did that over the course of 2 different videos. We got Ember and Steve set up in their Blackjack and Victor, respectively. Everything is good to go. So if we come back to the Draconis Reach book on this first page, which I love, we've got the campaign flowchart here. Our next step is going to be to choose a hotspot and a contract. I would add a little thing to the end here or generate a random contract because that is another option for you. Before I do that, I will point out that there are some game rules here that it tells you to think about. A couple we've already done. I know I'm going to play BattleTech. I made a separate video to build a force in Alpha Strike if you're interested, but I'm going to play the campaign in Classic BattleTech. I will play Alpha Strike when I do Aces. That's the way I'm going to do it. The second one is tracking jumps. You can decide in this campaign if you're just going to use a standard travel cost for all contracts that you take, which will be 300 SPs per scale, or you can decide to track jumps. You can actually map out how many jumps it's going to take for you to get from where you are to your next contract. And I think I'd like to do that. I didn't do it in Hinterlands, but I think I'd like to do that in this campaign. And I don't necessarily have to track any jumps right now, but it gives you 2 options if you're going to do this. You can either pay the generic transport costs and time, which would be 1 month at 300 support points, and you can go to whatever hotspot you want just from the beginning, or you can start at the T-Bolt or Tybalt, I don't know how you say that, or Proserpina hiring halls. So you can, and I think that's for free if I'm reading it correctly. So I can either pay to go directly to the hotspot I want, or I can go to one of the hiring halls and find my contract from there. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off at, I'm going to call it Tybalt. If I'm wrong, let me know. I'm going to go to the Tybalt hiring hall. That's free. That's where we're going to start this campaign. I'm going to go ahead and track it here. And this is going to be a 0 cost. There's nothing going on here. Everything's the same. From here on out, I will track my jumps wherever I need to go. Now, my contract that I take will likely cover some of my travel costs, but I'm going to track it individually. This will benefit me when my hotspot or contract that I'm going to is nearby. It will not benefit me when it's really far away. I am going to do the hotspots. I didn't do it in my Succession Wars campaign using the Hinterlands system. I decided I'll just go ahead and go wherever I want. For this one, I am going to use the hotspots. It makes your life easier. The contracts are already written. You just pick one and go for it. I like to make things difficult, apparently, but this time I'm playing it exactly as it's written in the book. Maybe an optional rule or 2, but for the most part, I'm playing it exactly how we have it in the book. If I'm looking at the table of contents, you'll see there are a ton of hotspots. I think 14 total in this book. So there's definitely something out there for you. This book, I will say, I was a little bit disappointed that they don't have the timeline like they did for Hinterlands. So they actually had a timeline of events in the Hinterlands, and they told you which hotspots were available in those different times. This book doesn't have that, so all the hotspots are available at any time. I suppose that's just because all this stuff is going on in the same place at the same time. You don't have factions popping up at different times like you did in the Hinterlands. So I suppose all this stuff is just available at any moment. I did a little bit of research ahead of time. I think I'm going to go with the Le Blanc, which I think means the white. I'm not very good at French, but I think that's what it means. And it tells you right down here at the bottom on this first page that you can go to, not even going to try to say it. Okay, I will. Pascagoula and LeBlanc are recommended hotspots for new players. I'm not a new player, but I play like one, right? I mean, my command prowess or lack thereof is well known to everybody. So I think it's best for me if I start at one of the new player hotspots. I picked this one because unfortunately, both of these are an objective raid, which I literally just played for the Hinterlands campaign. It is what it is, but that's what I'm going to pick. So I'm going to jump right there to this one. And this is what you do. You just, if you want to play the hotspots, you just come right down here and you go ahead and pick one. And that's what I'm going to do. And I think the way this works is that you're going to assume that any costs associated with getting to the point where you're going to start this campaign. So this would be the Three Sparks company coming from Appalachia or wherever they were, somewhere in the Hinterlands, finishing off a few odd jobs, all the way to the Draconis Reach, which is a long way. There are actually rules to do this. It tells you that Clan Seafox will help you do it. It's a long travel, but they will help you. We're just going to assume that was all done. They got a nice bonus from the Scouring Sands campaign from the Alyena Mercantile League. They paid for everything. They got the Tybalt. That's where we're starting. So I don't have to pay anything right now. We're going to find a contract, and that's when we'll start paying maintenance and travel and whatever else. If you're interested, there's lots of background detail about the planet, about the house that's involved. This is House Sandoval. and lots of stuff going on with them. And, there's a guy that's thinks he's in charge, and there's a woman who's actually in charge and really has the loyalty of her people. And that's kind of interesting to read about. There's lots of stuff earlier in the book that goes through all the different factions and what's going on in this area and why it's so contested right now. Great stuff to read. I mean, this really is half source book and half rule book. And I love that. I love that they put that in here, even though it's blowing my mind how much there is to read. In any case, we're not going to read about all that right now. We're going to scroll down and we have two opposing contracts to select from. So the first one here is Operation Sundown. This is being funded by the Draconis Combine Mustard Soldiery, the DCMS. So in other words, you're working for the Draconis Combine for this. They are actually coming to LeBlanc, which is more of a hiring hall for mercenaries, very friendly to mercenaries. And they feel like they are funding and supporting a lot of combat activity against the Combine. And so they're coming in here to raid it and try to stifle that and hopefully reduce the amount of mercenaries that are coming into the Combine territory and causing issues. The other contract is the Garrison, which is going to be funded by the Armed Forces of the Federated Sons, the AFFS. What's a little bit funny about this version of the contract is they're like, this isn't really a big deal. Just come and, just sit in garrison duty. We're evaluating mercenaries to see if you're worthy of working with the AFFS. So this is going to be some short-term garrison duty. This is a new guy that's in charge here. He's really low ranking, but he's this mercenary liaison, and he thinks this is his opportunity to kind of make a name for himself, and that's what he's doing. So he's kind of telling you like, this is an excellent opportunity for some experience and to learn from the superior organization and strategy of the armed forces of the Federated Sons. Come prepared for desert conditions. I thought that was kind of funny. I'm going to pick this one. The terms of this contract are more appealing to me, so you can see that up here if you're not totally familiar. I hate that it does this, by the way they built the columns. Like I highlight stuff over here and it highlights it on the other side. Anyway, so it's a 3-month contract. They will pay 100% of our base costs. So this will be our maintenance costs that we have to pay, which are 500 support points per scale. Support is straight 100%. That's the easiest support terms to understand. They will basically pay for all repairing, rearming, and healing. So if we have any mech warriors who are injured during a track, they'll pay to heal them. That's all they pay for. They won't pay for any replacements and they won't pay for anything else that's going on. That's all on us. They'll pay for 50% of our transport and they'll grant us 40% salvage rights. And what that means is whatever salvage remains at the end of a track, we'll calculate the value of it. They will pay us 40% of it in SPs. We can then decide to use that to purchase some of the salvage. If we can't pay for it all with what they give us, we can pay the remainder and take a salvaged unit. That's how that works. Command rights are integrated. This means we are actually being part of the AFFS. We'll have very limited say in what we do. We have to go along with what they say. That's going to make command complications more likely. So when we roll on the table for these little random things that change up the track, it's more likely we're going to get something not so great because we just have to listen to what they say and we can't do things our way. If I go back up to the DCMS contract, here are the terms. They're not that different. The base pay is also 100%, so they'll pay for all our maintenance throughout the contract. They will actually pay better support. They'll give us battle coverage. So they'll pay straight 100% for all our repair, rearm, and healing. They'll also give us 10% of battlefield losses. So if one of our mechs is destroyed, they will give us a voucher, so to speak, of 10% of that value. So let's just say, for example, Steve, his Victor is destroyed and we can't recover it. They would give us 10%. So they give us about 172 SPs to cover the loss of that unit. And then we can go purchase another one with a little bit of money in our pocket. Transportation is also 50%. Salvage rights are only exchange. So what that means is if there's salvage available, they will give us 1/4 of the value, but we can't actually salvage anything. So even if there's units available, we're not allowed to take them. The DCMS is taking all of them, which kind of makes sense if you read the background here because they're having some issues with maintaining their forces because a whole lot of stuff happened where they invaded the Federated Sons. The Federated Sons fought back, cut off their supply lines, and they're trying to just scramble to get anybody they can. So it makes sense that they would probably be trying to take all the salvage that is available. You get liaison command rights. They're not as bad as integrated. So you're kind of working with them. They have someone watching over you. You're not totally working as part of their force. So your command complications likely won't be as bad. But overall, I like the other contract a little better. I don't particularly care that much, but defensive contracts, I think, are hopefully easier to avoid major damage. When you actually see the track, that's probably not the case. I think they're going to have an easy time. But anyway, this is the one I picked. I like to pick the contract before I go down here and read the mission brief because it's giving you the behind the scenes stuff, which is revealing what's going to happen. Honestly, reading these contracts again, I feel like Ember might take some offense to how cocky this person is and how they think that it's such a great honor to work for them. And she may think that this person is going to get them into some trouble because he's an idiot. And he might say, oh, this is no problem, but it's actually going to be a really difficult fight. It's okay. I think I'm going to go with this. Next, you're going to come down here and do the behind the scenes stuff. And it's kind of funny because you start this contract and then it's like, okay, just sit around and do nothing for the first 2 months. But it says these contracts are opposing ones. So if you're playing against another player, they're going to take the other side of the contract and you're going to meet each other in battle. It says the first month, both players spend preparing for it's kind of written weirdly, preparing and traveling to LeBlanc or the Draconis Combine staging area. The Federated Sons occupy local positions and begin garrison and patrol duty. So, in other words, we're kind of just there, just checking things out, making sure no trouble is happening. But basically, we're just going to pay to run our force and to travel to the location. So, let's go back here and we're going to enter our first event. So, this is month 1 of the contract. It's called LeBlanc Garrison. I'm just going to call it LeBlanc. And I'm just doing this because this will categorize it for me. There we go. So the event is maintenance. This is every single month you have to pay maintenance. The cost for maintenance is 500 SPs per scale. So we have a scale 1, it's going to cost us 500 SPs. So right now my paid column is going to show 500. However, if we go back to my contract terms, the base pay is 100%. That means they're going to pay the base cost of maintaining my force, which is 500. They will pay the full amount. And so I will pay nothing for this. So my SPs will not change based on that. I'm going to keep my reputation at 1. All right, now I'm going to make another line here. We're going to capture our travel to LeBlanc. Now this is going to be more complicated because I am going to track my jumps. I'm going to switch to my maps here. And I wish, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen grab this and then I'm going to rotate it because this is driving me crazy. There we go. So much better. Wow, that was annoying me to no end. Okay, and hopefully I'm not showing too much of this book. I want to be careful about that. I mean, if you like the book, if you want to do this, you should buy the PDF or buy the book. I'm just showing for teaching purposes, but everybody should obviously buy the book if they want to do this. All right, so we're starting right here in Tybalt. Here we go. We are headed to LeBlanc. I'm hoping this isn't like super duper far away, but it might be. LeBlanc is right here, right on the border. Go with purple. I think that looks better. All right, so I'm going from here to here. So I'm going to just count the jumps. Then we're going to go back and look at the rules for how exactly this works. But that's going to be a lot of jumps. And when we read the rules here, it's going to be interesting because this is actually going to take over a month to get there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jumps. Yeah, and maybe I should have just done the standard. That's okay. This will be a good training exercise. But when you're using standard transportation costs, that's this little section here, you're just paying a flat cost of 300 SP. This represents hiring a drop ship and a jump ship, and that's it. You just kind of magically appear. It doesn't matter how far away you are. You just pay this amount. You show up immediately to start the contract, and you just go from there. There is something new in Draconis Reach that says if you take the contract while you're in a hiring hall, which I did in Tybalt, the transportation costs are going to include returning back there if you want at the end of the contract. When you're tracking jumps, the cost is different. You're going to start off with a base of 50 SP. That's what we're seeing right here. That's just for hiring the drop ship and the jump ship. And then you're going to pay 50 SP for each jump that you make. So I have 7. That would mean I'm 350 in for the jumps, 50 for just the infrastructure, 400 total. Okay, that part seems easy enough. I'm not making out on this. I'm going to pay more for this contract, but it is what it is. Note that while transportation costs will increase with more jumps, every 4 jumps rounded down will require a separate month of travel. The transport cost is multiplied by the scale. We're just scale 1, so the 400 is going to be the cost. However, because this is 4 plus jumps, you're actually going to spend a month just traveling, doing nothing else. And that means you have to pay maintenance costs for that time. So on the next page, it talks a little bit more about this, and it says, this is where I got a little confused. If the transport takes a month or more, which is 4 or more jumps, the transport costs may also include covering the base pay at the transport term percentage. It's a little bit confusing when you're reading it in a vacuum, but if you go to the bottom, it says, if the travel takes less than a month, 3 or less jumps, the month is under contract and paid as contract time, not travel time. So the implication is that when you have more than 4 jumps, a month of traveling is not under contract. They're not going to just pay for you to come clear across the inner sphere. So that's a travel month. You are not getting your base pay. I hope that makes sense. So what they're saying is this is new to Draconis Reach, this whole thing that I highlighted here. In those situations, you might get covered for your maintenance costs by the transport term. This will apply to a third of the total contract length. So in other words, in our case, this is a 3-month contract that I'm accepting. We have 7 jumps. So at 4 plus, that's a month of travel time. So we are going to have 1 month of pure travel. The remaining 3 jumps are going to be under contract because I'm arriving at the end of the month and getting set up. So that will be under contract and I'll get my base pay. But that 1 month is going to be spent purely traveling. Now, that is exactly 1/3 of the total contract length. And the next sentence gives you an example. If the contract is for 3 months, the contract's transportation term will cover for up to 1 month of travel time to the contract location. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Let me break it down for you. Let's just assume I don't negotiate this contract at all. This first month would be purely traveling. So I have to pay my maintenance costs. That's going to cost me $500. They are not going to pay for that from the base pay. I also have to travel to LeBlanc. We know that's going to cost $400. With the terms as they are, they're going to cover 50% of my travel. We know that. So that will be covered. Because this is only 1/3 of the total contract length, the transport term will cover a portion of my maintenance cost. Now, if the travel term was 100, they would cover this in full, but it's only 50%. So they'll cover my maintenance costs at 50% as well. So this is going to cost a lot to get here. So that would be month 1. When we get into month 2, we're going to have to pay our maintenance again, but this time we are under contract. So this is going to pay this in full. Month 1 is pure travel time. They'll cover a portion under the travel term because it's 1/3 of the contract length or less. The second month is only 3 jumps, so I will arrive and be under contract by the end of that month. So that'll be the first month in the contract description. They will pay my full base pay, which is 100% of my maintenance costs. I hope I said that very clearly. This took me a while to wrap my head around. It's cool, and I like that it adds a little bit of granularity into your traveling. So you have to think about where you're going to take these contracts. You can't just jump all over the place or you're going to starve yourself of resources. But doing the standard way probably is a lot easier. You may decide to do that after you watch me. All right, now I would decide. So I'm accepting this contract. I understand at a base level what these terms would be. Now I can decide if I would like to modify any of these terms. At scale 1, which I'm accepting this contract at scale 1, if that wasn't obvious, I'm sorry, but you're going to pick your scale when you take the contract, but I only have a scale 1 force, so there would be no reason to pick scale 2 or 3. When you have a really large force, you can accept the contract at scale 2 or scale 3, or you can choose to accept a contract at a lower level. But remember, you're limited on how much you can bring when you take a lower contract scale. You can only bring 3 units or 4,500 battle value at scale 1. So that's no problem for me now because we have a small force. But later on, that will be a bigger decision for you to make. So right now, I think I'm good with my support. I think that's fine. My decision would be, do I increase base pay? Because if I do, I will get a guaranteed 50 SP every month. Or do I try to increase the transportation? Here's what I'd be getting into. I can use my reputation to bump it 1 step. So at base pay, I'd go from 100 to 110. At transportation, I would go from 50 to 75%. Now, they'll pay for me to get back to Tybalt at the end of this. So I think the base pay is probably the way to go because I'm going to have 3 months of base pay. I would not be able to bump integrated to house. I'd have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. I'll only be able to get 3 because I can also, in addition to using my reputation, I can sacrifice other terms and then bump another. So I could take 2 steps away from one term and then go up 1 step on another term. So under salvage rates, I could bump that down by 2, and then I could increase my transportation term 1 step to 75. I could do that again. I could take 2 more away and try to bump something else again. There are limits on contracts now, though. So no term may be increased more than once per scale. That's a limit. Doesn't matter if you increase it with reputation or by sacrificing steps. So I could try to bump the base pay and the transportation, but I'd be limited in doing anything more than that because I can only bump each turn by one because I'm scale one. So I think what I'd be deciding here, I want to keep my straight 100 support rights. I don't want to change that. I think I'm going to bump the base pay by one to 110%. And then I think I might sacrifice salvage rights at 40 to 20 and then bump my transportation terms to 75. Now that I'm thinking about it, that transportation term actually helps because I'm also going to get 25% of the 500 for my first maintenance costs. And that's going to be 125 support points. So before I said it was a wash, it's actually not. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to do that. So I have another tab in here for my contract. So I'll put this information in here in a minute. But I think for the length of contract we know is 3 months. Number of tracks I think is going to be 2 total. And my base pay, I'm going to bump that using reputation to 100%. Support is straight 100%. And transportation, I'm going to bump to 75%. And I'm going to do that by giving up 2 steps from my salvage rates. I might end up regretting that if there is a lot of salvage, but at scale 1, it's probably not going to be that much. We are integrated here. We're really taking a hit to our pride on this. No bonus for now. And I think I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to drop any other terms at this point. I think I'm good with the decision I made there. I hope that gives you a feel for how the negotiation works. I think it's a pretty cool system. I mean, given you're not actually negotiating with a human, but it gives you a little bit of flexibility. But I like that they put a cap on it here because I feel like at larger scales, this could get out of control with how you're just saying, I'll just take tons of base pay and just get paid no matter what. So I liked it. It feels a little more tense in terms of trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. But I think I'm good with the changes that I made there. All right, there you go. There's the final contract. I just copied some of the information into here. You can do this if you want. You don't have to. Really, what's important is that you understand the terms. But there's my accepted contract. Now I'll come back here and I have an updated term now. So I bumped my transportation term to help cover some of this crazy amount of travel that I have to do. And look at that, made a huge difference. So I'm paying 225 support points less. So that was really good for that negotiation. That really saved me a lot. Okay, but I have an accepted contract. I've paid my maintenance for the travel month. I've paid my transportation costs. And now I've paid my second month of maintenance, which is fully covered for actually landing on the planet and starting our garrison duty. At this point, we're going to go back to the track now and figure out what exactly we're going to do. Okay, so it says the second month, the Federated Suns player continues garrison duty and patrols. The Draconis Combine player is smuggled. And sorry, I don't know if it's Draconis or Draconis. I'll probably say both. Smuggled to the planet by sympathetic elements of the LeBlanc criminal underground. Once on planet, the Draconis Combine gathers recent intelligence and plans the raids. Both players receive base pay and no tracks are played this month. Okay, so I'm already in my third month of our campaign and I've literally done nothing. Now, I, of course, have the option here if I'd like. If you continue on with this mission briefing, you can see the purchase options. The mercenary secondary market is the primary source of any mechs to be found on planet. Each month, the player may attempt to find a mech unit available for purchase. Roll 2d6, and on a 7 plus, there is a mech for sale. On an 11 plus, there are 2. Roll on the Federated Suns purchase option table. Additionally, the player may purchase any vehicle or infantry on the Federated Suns tanker and battle armor table. 2 purchases of each per month. I think maybe what I'll do is just roll and see, and then I'll decide if I actually want to buy something or not. Okay, here we go. A 4. All right, nothing's available. That was the first month. I'll roll again on the second month. A 9. Okay, so 1 mech is available. All right, so this is where I would go now. So I'm going to roll 1d6 and then do it again and see which mech is available, and I can decide to buy it or not. Okay, here's the first one, a 1. So this would just be a light mech. Subtable A. Roll it again. 6. That'd be a Watchman. I don't have a miniature for that. It's really, really expensive, so no thank you. If it was a Javelin or a Hatchet, well, the Hatchet Man's wrong. Apparently they have the wrong battle value for that. But if it was something relatively cheap, I might consider it. But at 1,225 points, no thank you. I have no idea what's going to happen on this campaign. So I'm going to pass on that. But that's something you could do while you're waiting on this. So you're just kind of sitting around, just waiting for some action. The third month sees the Draconis Combine initiate the raid against the local supply depots. This track is played as an objective raid with the following adjustments. They're not going to be grabbing stuff and trying to take it away. They're going to be trying to wreck the place. Every medium building destroyed by the attacker is 50 objective points. Yay. They have a much easier objective. And an objective raid, you place the buildings pretty close to the center. So yeah, that's going to be fairly easy for them to accomplish because buildings are immobile. Okay, I won't read the last paragraph. I've been trying very hard not to read that because that tells you what happens if you win or they win. So I'll come down here a little bit and we'll do some command complications. Now, I don't have any of these map sheets. I'm just going to make my own map sheet. This will also tell you any special rules for the contract. So basically, victory is a successful completion of the final track. So this first mission doesn't mean anything for the contract overall, but it probably will set me up for much more chance of success in the final track. It tells you about temporary hires. So if you're unable to field a force of at least 2/3 of the maximum permissible battle value, which would be 3,000. So if I get under 2,000 and I can't bring at least 2/3 of my force, the local mercenary will offer their services. The player may choose each track of this contract whether they want to pay the local mercenary to participate. So here are your two options. They have their own pilot card at the end. And I think once the track is done, there are stipulations on whether you can actually hire them on permanently. I was hunting around for what I add to my role, but it tells you right here. Add 3 for integrated command. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, we're integrated. Yikes. Okay, let's go back. This is an important role here. I hope I get something nice and low. 3. So we're going to go up to a 6. Oh, of course, I get the one that's absolutely humongous. Your opponent receives support from a local partisan group, either members of the criminal underground or local resistance fighters from one of the hidden hydroponics facilities. Your opponent receives the following per scale as free battlefield support. The free support only affects the current track. So I am the defender. They are the attacker, I believe. They're going to get 2 motorized conventional infantry, okay, and 2 galleon 100s. Haven't even rolled up their force yet, and they've already got 4 things. All right, now they're going to roll, and they're liaison, so they only add 1. Hope they get something real high. Oh, come on. All right, so they get a 2. No complication. Ah, that's too bad. All right. Okay, so for the opposing force, I have to figure out what kind of force they are. So if I go to the track for objective raid, you're going to look here. So attacker are raiders. And it just tells you right here, raiders subtract 1 from the roll. Okay. So now I'm going to go to the Draconis Combine and we're going to be looking at scale 1 here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a 1d6 roll and subtract 1 from it, and that will be their force. I don't have the vast majority of these units, so I guess I'll have to proxy them, or I could just re-roll a 6. And then they get a -1, so they're going to have a Shadowhawk. Great, I actually have one. And then they're going to get these things in addition. So the way this works is you always use the primary force, so that's going to be a Shadowhawk for them. And then if you're playing with battlefield support, they're going to get this in the middle. If you're not playing battlefield support, you can substitute the middle part here with these. I believe that's how it works. So I will create this force. That's what they're going to be using. If I had a high handicap, right now my handicap's just a 4. If I go back to my spreadsheet, my handicap average is a 4. They won't get any kind of a benefit from that. If our handicap average was 20 or above, their mech would get a gunnery upgrade. So it would go from a 4, I think it was said it was a 4/5, right? It would go to a 3/5. If it was 25 or higher, if my handicap was 25 or above, but not quite 40, they would get a gunnery and a piloting skill upgrade from this. As it is, I'm going to use this force exactly as it's shown here, but they're also going to get those extra units that it mentioned. Wow, they're going to have a lot of stuff, but they'll get this plus the things they got from the command complications. And yeah, wow, we're going to have our work cut out for us here. All right, there you go. I was just trying to figure out exactly what their battle value ends up being with this stuff. I just multiplied the BSP point value from the cards by 20. I think that's the way you convert it. It ends up being 3,531. Maybe I didn't do that right. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't include these because they're from the complication. But all in all, it ends up being 3,531. I think that sounds about right because I think those forces end up being 3,500 battle value total. So anyway, it looks pretty close. I did realize when you're looking at this for the complication that it's telling you here, this is the BSP asset. That's the name of it. Actually, I should say that's the name of it. And the parentheses here are if you don't want to play with battlefield support points. If you're just using regular infantry, vehicles, everything else, it gives you the skill ratings for all of that stuff. That's pretty cool. I don't think they did that in Hinterlands. At least I don't remember it. It was very limited in its support for non-battlefield support. So I really like that they actually are taking into account people who may not want to play with that rule. For some of these units, now I have galleons and I have the strike cards from the mercenaries box, but these are new. And anything that doesn't already have a battlefield support card are at the end of this book. So you'll see there's a Saracen and there's the Tokugawa. Okay, that seemed like a lot to get this track up and running. I apologize if it feels that way. I mean, I'm kind of learning a little bit of this as I go too, because I didn't use hotspots before and I'm using them this time. There are rules changes for Draconis Reach. I hope this just helps. It's kind of like a working session with us. I'm working my way through it. You're watching me work through it. We're all learning together. I hope this was helpful. I think I've got everything squared away. That's their force for this track. They're just going to have to try to destroy some buildings. If I go back and we look at objective raid, it just says for the game setup, the defender will place/designate two medium objective buildings within 4 hexes. That's all it says. The previous version of this in Hinterlands, I think, said you had to set up 6 and designate 2. Yeah, there you go. In Hinterlands, it says the defender will place and designate 6 medium buildings. The reason this is important is because their goal is not to take stuff from the designated buildings, it's to destroy medium buildings. They only get 50 objective points from that. So if I look down here, grab the stuff, they get 100. But for the other one, it's saying in this particular mission, they have to destroy the buildings and they only get 50 from that. So I feel like I need to have more buildings out there for them, or it's not going to be exactly fair. Anyway, I'll think about this before I start playing the track, but I just wanted to point that out, that it's a little bit different. So these are some of the things I'm working through as I do this, because it's a little bit different from what I saw in Hinterlands. But anyway, that's what they'll be trying to do. We'll be trying to just destroy them. And there's my crew. So we'll be seeing Ember and Steve joining the battle. I'll have 38 battlefield support points. So Shockwave, our combat vehicle expert, is going to come up with a good mix of support assets that we can use. I know I've been pretty much against battlefield support assets since I started making videos, but I am going to use them in this. I'm not going to complain about them. I'm just going to use them. I'll let you know what I think a little bit, but I'm not going to be railing against them or anything. I do think they make it really easy to set up these missions. I feel like this campaign will probably be a little bit easier than my other one, where I'm using full rules vehicles, but we'll see. In any case, that's how you get a contract. I know this was long, and hopefully you're not discouraged. But the hotspots do make it easy. You just have to kind of read through what they have. We spent a little time learning about the travel costs, learning how to roll up an opposition force. You may not have to do that stuff if you're playing against other players. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And I will see you for track 1 of this new campaign.